Well, welcome, everybody. Good morning. This is Real Estate Matters. For over 10 years, the voice of real estate in Flagler County in Palm Coast, Florida. I'm Toby Tobin, publisher of GoToby.com. I'm a contributor to the Palm Coast Observer. I'm a Florida licensed realtor with Landmark Group at Compass on Flagler Beach. Co-host Anna Marie is back in the studio today post-surgery. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks. I made it.
Good. You feeling better today?
I'm getting there.
Goes slow, doesn't it?
It's so slow and so exhausting, but glad to be back.
So anyway, the listing of the week. This is our new feature, so we started last week. The new listing is, it's about luxury coastal living. Welcome to 2740 South A1A in Flagler Beach. This beautiful 3-bedroom home, 2.5 bath, oceanfront home, offers a sweeping Atlantic view, a chef's kitchen with natural gas, private beach access, and a bright open layout perfect for everyday living of weekend escape. Step outside to resort-style outdoor living, a heated and chilled pool, built-in natural gas grill, artificial turf lawn. Wow.
They're really good. The artificial turf lawns are really nice now.
No, they sure are.
And they're really good for water flow.
Mm-hmm. And a private putting green. That's the artificial turf also, I'm sure. In a backyard that's an entertainer's dream. It's a 2740 South A1A. It's where the beach is your backyard. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home, consider working with me and the rest of the experienced team at Landmark Group Compass. You can reach me at 386-931-7124 or email me at Toby, that's T-O-B-Y, Toby at GoToby.com. The listing has its own webpage. It's 2740a1a.com, so you can check it out for yourself as well online. Thanks to our sponsors, the Flagler County Home Builders Association, Klein Construction, and Hammock Community Church. I've got like 27 pages of notes today, so let's see if we can get
You're going to do it?
I think we can get past page 3.
There's always hope.
Okay, just some quick notes. We're early in May, so there's not much sense spending a lot of time going over May statistics. But one thing that has stood out early on, 51 homes sold. That's as of Thursday afternoon this week. 51 homes sold. Median price $370. Last May it was $379, so we're still in the ballpark. But surprisingly, the average days on market is only 48 so far in May, and it's been up in the 50s and 60s in recent months. So that's a good sign. Mm-hmm. Only one home out of the 51 is sold for under $250,000, and 7 over $1 million. And the active days on market for the $1 million plus is only 45 days. So that's actually 3 days less than the overall. That's unusual. Usually the expensive homes hang around.
Yeah. And at 7 over $1 million this early in the month, that is exceeding our, what I'd say is a trend now.
Mm-hmm. 7 out of 52. So we're way over 10%. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. So I'm going to editorialize a little bit here. The socioeconomic ladder has many rungs. Regardless of the rung, there's always at least one level below that is often despised as those kind of people. And the rungs above are envied. And those in gated communities are envied. Renters are unwelcome. Wealth is also partitioned, and we've talked about this on the show, by physical boundaries. Flagler County is a very good example of that, where we have the beachside people segregated from the rest of us by the intercoastal waterway.
Right.
And then you've got the higher-end gated communities of Grand Haven, the Conservatory, Palm Coast Plantation, that are east of I-95.
Yeah.
And then west of I-95, where I am, in the P section. You got the P section, B section, ours, all the sections.
Just the regular folk.
And then you got the piece over on the western side of the county, the other side, literally the other side of the tracks.
Right.
And that really does pretty much segregate the wealth factor or home value factor as well. But today's market paints a picture of the results of that. Society is either unwilling or unable to accept the fact very well reflected in the Palm Coast City Comprehensive Plan, which was very well written and henceforth ignored. But here's what it says, quote, "Citizens of all income levels shall have the opportunity to obtain quality housing at a reasonable cost." Further, it finds that the cornerstone of a city's quality of life is its housing stock. Citizens of all income levels desire safe, secure, good quality housing at a reasonable cost, and the public sector plays a role in helping to ensure that the housing needs of all citizens are met by attempting to balance the cost of housing with the income levels of available jobs in the community. Such a noble goal.
It is. It really is.
People have campaigned on that every election as long as I've been here, and that's 25 years now.
And people campaign on that at all levels of government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that affordability goal remains unfulfilled. And as an example, for months we've been tracking the number of homes selling below $250,000 and comparing it to those selling for above $1 million. And for months the numbers seemed eerily equal. You know, you'd have 9 below. If you had 8 or 9 below 250, you'd have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 above.
Yeah, it was almost uncanny.
Yeah, as well. It's spreading now because, as I said, only one so far this month, has sold for under 250, and 7 out of 51 over $1 million.
Sorry, Toby, I am hung up on the last line from the comp plan of that the housing would be commensurate with the income levels of available jobs in the community. And that would mean that we would need to have a lot more affordable level housing.
Yeah, a lot more affordable level housing
to match this statement.
Yeah, it's a balance between housing.
Maybe we say income restricted. You know, there's lots of different terms, but something that is, you know, maybe 40% of something under 30%. We would have to have housing that matches no more than 30% of the person's household income going towards. That is the definition of affordable housing.
That's the governmental definition. Yeah,
and one of the few governmental definitions I agree with.
But you know, affordable housing considers two things. It has income as a factor, and then the price of the home, or the cost of the housing. And you can solve the problem by reducing the cost of the housing. And we'll talk about a couple ways that is potentially possible.
There's another way to solve this, though.
Raise the income.
Yeah, bring in the jobs. Bring in the.
But you know, that's nice. But you're gonna let's say you bring in some high-tech company that has
and we
lots
don't
of
have
people,
high-tech people with the training and the experience to it. I understand that.
But if you bring in people that have a household income of $125,000, they're still going to want pizza delivered.
Oh yeah,
they're still going to want to go to restaurants.
Oh, absolutely, it doesn't.
Doesn't change the jobs at the restaurants at the beach, and you still need landscapers. You need teachers. You need first responders.
Yes. It doesn't eliminate the need, but it would.
It just changes the balance.
Yes, yeah,
yeah. But the interesting fact what I did is I took the first 4 months of this year and compared to the same 4 months last year. So we're talking about January through April, and some things didn't surprise me. The fact that the number of homes sold in 2024 in the first 4 months, 895. First 4 months this year, 845. So it's pretty close. Okay, but then the median price last year was $368. This year it's $366. So that's about as close as you can get without being equal. The active days on market last year 61, this year 64. So that's pretty consistent. Mm-hmm. Square footage is this year running a little bit more, but that's not a meaningful difference. But the cash buyers, the number of cash buyers, 313 this year versus 297 last year. But that, if you look at it on a percentage basis, last year the cash buyers for all home sales, this is MLS reported sales, 33.2% last year, 37% this year.
That's significant.
So that's a jump. Mm-hmm. And if you look at new construction, last year new construction 23.6% was cash. This year it's 30.3%.
That's even more significant.
Yeah, if you look at existing homes, last year 39% cash, this year 40.9%. Not much of a change there.
So more people are purchasing their new construction in cash.
Mm-hmm, yeah. But if you look at, here's where it becomes more stark, the lower end of the market, the under 250 category, and the upper end, the million plus category. Last year, each of those two categories, 2/3 of the homes were cash. Now, for totally different reasons. Mm-hmm. At the bottom end of the market, it's because it's primarily investors buying to rent.
Right.
And it's an investment. And it's been a good investment in this market lately. But 66.7% over $1 million are paying cash too. And they're paying cash because they can.
They can, yeah.
They're, the fact that the mortgage rate's gone from, 2% to 7% doesn't affect their buying ability. They can still afford what they want to buy.
It literally makes no difference.
So the real difference then is, and let's just jump back to pre-pandemic, because that's an important date in my mind, because I watched the bubble rise and burst back in 2005, 6, 7. And locally, the median home selling price peaked at the beginning of 2006.
Right.
That was when it hit its peak, and then it plunged 60%. I mean, it was a big dive, but it was pre-pandemic. It was 2019 when we got back to that same level. So it was many, many years, over a decade to return.
Yeah.
But then we've gone on from beyond that. Before we get into going back to look at 2019, we have to take a quick break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I am blown away.
More people are listening to local radio than ever before.
The amount of people that come up to me and ask me about my radio ad is staggering.
More people are listening to local radio in more ways than ever before.
At least one a day. I mean it.
More people, more advertising results. To advertise on the radio, call Flagler Broadcasting Vice President of Sales, Kirk Keller.
Kirk Keller? Hey, that's me. 386-986-9911.
flaglerbroadcasting.com.
Well, welcome back to the second half of Real Estate Matters. Thanks for staying with us. Just before the break, we were talking about the differences from 2024 to 2025, particularly in our local housing market at either end of the spectrum. The bottom half and the top half of the market are behaving decidedly different than the middle of the market. And the middle of the market is much more dependent on mortgage financing. And sales tend to be a little bit longer at that end of the market too, compared to the lower end. And the upper end is surprisingly low days on market. But let's look back at 2019, which is pre-pandemic. And that was as normal a market as almost as I've seen in 25 years.
That was the year I bought my first house.
So, and I can't do the total comparison like I just did between 24 and 25 because the MLS system changed software along the way, and the old system didn't track cash sales and new construction as effectively as the new system does.
We still have some good data, though.
But there's some good data. The number of homes sold, 763 that year, which is substantially fewer homes than this year. The median price, $235,000. Now we're up to 370-ish.
Yeah.
But the active days on the market was 46. I would expect the average days to be a little bit lower than what we are having right now, but that's pretty much in line with what we still have.
Yeah, that is.
And that's typically a good indicator. Single-family permits, 344 back in 2019. And compare that, as soon as I turn the page here, compare that to 735 in 2025. And, 2024. And 673 the year before that. So we're building more homes. We're building more homes this year than we did last year. We built more last year than we did the year before. I think raises the question, why do we only have one home under 250 so far this month?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Looks like the bottom market, the build to rent market is drying up at the single family level, and I suspect it's because we've got more new apartment buildings coming online.
I still see some build to rent permits getting pulled on the Palm Coast report. If you look, I know of a few builders who exclusively do build to rent in duplexes, and they're still pulling about the same rate that they always have, which is a handful. It's pretty insignificant.
Yeah, it's like 7, 8, 9, 10 a month.
In totality of all the builders, if that. So, yeah, it's consistent for them, but I think it's pretty niche. I think the 250 sales that we're seeing are probably going to be houses that are in bad shape that need to be
the handyman's helpers.
Exactly, that really need a lot of work before they can go to market, and then they'll probably get flipped. Things like that.
But again, that end of the market tends to be a cash.
It does,
If it's an investor, it's not the end users that are.
No, the end user will end up paying close to these average prices.
Where do we look for solutions? Last week we talked about pending legislation in Tallahassee,
right,
that would allow what technically they're called auxiliary dwelling units, but we call them mother-in-law apartments or granny flats. Either internal modification inside the main dwelling by adding another kitchen, or an outside attached or unattached dwelling. And this would have to be a state level action, I think, because most municipalities they're going to resist. Yeah. And as I've said for a long time, if we don't solve our problem locally ourselves, Tallahassee and Washington are going to attempt to solve it.
Proving you right.
Yeah. So anyway, last week we talked about the granny flat issue. We raised it, and at that time the House had passed it and turned it over to the Senate to vote on it. And the Senate had showed great interest in a companion bill. So I assumed that the Senate would accept the House version, but they didn't, so it died this year. And I know you talked to the Florida Home Builders Association about why. You want to give us a little update?
So there were some concerns between the House and the Senate and trying to get that companion bill passed and over. So anyway, the bill did die this session, and the main concerns that the legislators had were probably the same concerns we hear locally. So concerns over parking, whether this legislation would be used as a loophole for short-term rentals, and whether or not local government had to allow them in all situations. Now, the concerns over parking, we talked about that last week, that the people are already living there, and their parking as it is.
Yeah, we already have a parking problem.
We already have a parking problem. Whether it would be used as a loophole for short-term rentals, we talked about that didn't it have a minimum
one of the proposed amendments was a minimum 30-day lease term.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like 30 days is fine, but most people would probably be okay, I would say, with even a 6-month lease term.
Well,
coming from multifamily property management, 6 months is really common.
Yeah, I know, but so is the underground economy.
Fair.
And that's what you see. Drive all over town any day of the week around 8 o'clock at night, where most people aren't working, and you'll see in single-family residential neighborhoods lots and lots of homes with 5 and 6 cars out front. And
I agree, but they're staying there longer than 30 days. You don't think so?
No, and I think a lot of them are also not reporting rental income they're not registered.
Sure not.
They're not paying business tax to the city. It's just, when people want to raise the sales tax too high, you just create a more cash economy.
Yeah, you do.
People barter.
Absolutely.
You
create a more legal activity. And then whether or not local government had to allow them in all situations, and Toby and I talked about this, perhaps meaning like an HOA, and how the HOA governance would fall into the legislation.
HOAs tend to be wealthier communities. They tend to have
more restrictions.
They tend to have more restrictions, but they also tend to have more direct line interface into Tallahassee. Most people that are serving us in Tallahassee live in gated communities when they're in their districts, and they tend to get carved out. They got carved out of the vacation rental legislation, and even the last several years that they've tried to tighten up the vacation legislation, that's always been a carve out for gated communities or deed restricted.
But they did tighten up those HOA laws not too long ago. But that could be in their best interest if you look at it that way.
And I passed you an article I know this week about in Dallas, Texas. They've passed some new legislation that allows
triplets.
Well, three-story walk-ups, basically small three-story walk-ups to be built using typical single-family residential building code requirements rather than industrial or commercial requirements.
They were really reminiscent to me of like in New York or New Jersey when they take a 2 or 3 story single family house and convert it into three separate apartments.
That was my first dwelling unit when I was married.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We were up on the 3rd floor, and it was walk up.
Yeah,
and there was
really standard.
One set of stairs that went up all 3 floors, and then a fire escape down the back.
Yeah. Hopefully never had to use that.
We've got 3-story homes all over on the beach side.
Right.
So it just doesn't make any sense. Well, we've got through 3 pages of notes out of 7.
Yeah, we did.
Pretty good. Maybe
that was your goal.
We'll do better next week. That's better than most weeks. Anyway, you can watch us on it's on
YouTube.
On
the
YouTube,
Flagler Beach TV.
Flagler Beach TV. The Flagler Beach TV Facebook page is probably the best place to pick up the videos. They're doing very well. We're getting well over a couple thousand views on our recent shows now. So remember
landmarkgroupfla.com.
Yeah.
And click on Real Estate Matters podcast in the top navigation bar, or Flagler Beach TV videos on Facebook.
Call me at 386-931-7124 or email me at toby@gotoby.com. I'm Toby Tobin, and I approve this show. See y'all next week.